So how do you feel to be the head brewer of Mother Earth?
Pretty sweet.
I bet. What's
I get to come up with a lot of beers and, well, I guess it's kind of like when a new beer comes out, one of them's my favorite. So I would say Pale Ale is my favorite. I like IPAs, but they're a little higher in alcohol, and I seem to be a touch of a lightweight. So when I get Pale Ale, it's a little bit lower in alcohol, so I can have a few more than being on the floor with IPA.
Like the labels?
I do like the labels. It took Pale Ale a long time to get to where it was.
Yeah.
We probably went through 7 or 8 revisions to get Pale Ale where it was. If nobody knows this, Trent's grade school teacher does all the paintings for all our labels.
That's awesome.
Dinah.
So Dinah Silva does all the labels and she paints them. So Trent and Steven generally come up with all the names and how they want the label to look. And then Dinah paints them, and then they get digitized, scanned, and then the graphic artist puts all the graphics around the artwork, and then it turns into a label.
Awesome.
So when you see a beer out in the marketplace, we've known that beer for 3 to 4 months before it actually gets out.
Yeah, how long does it take to start one and to finish one?
Well, they're all kind of different. I mean, some are easier than others, but I would say generally probably like 3 months before the painting comes out to where it actually gets on a bottle.
Which beer was the hardest to take to get the final product?
If I had Trent and Steven here, I guarantee they would say second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The way they print on a can, the printer can't show all the colors and all the shadows.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to a label that's on a bottle, it's completely different to what they can print on a can.
What about in a beer to get to the right amount?
Some of the beers that I've created worked out the first time, and then others I've done on our test pilot system.
How do you know when they're right and when they're not?
You taste
my
it.
tongue
Yeah.
and other people's tongues.
Yeah.
Growlers of tasting.
What, how does it go in our tap room, or how do Trent and Steven and Josh feel about the beer? I mean, a lot of all the beers that we have started out from what do we like, what's not in the marketplace. What else?
You own the motorcycle.
You don't even have to cut that out. You can keep that in there.
Yeah, no, motorcycle.
Yeah.
She roamed
I
around.
want to know how the hops go into the beer. Is it like? Well, I mean, it's
Yeah, hops.
plant.
Hops grow on a vine,
Yeah.
and they look like a cone like this, and they grow 20 or 30 feet tall.
Where do you get those from? You order 'em?
Oregon, Washington, and Idaho are the biggest hop producers
Our backyard.
in the United States. And then we
Really?
also grow some locally, and some are grown at the brewery.
So then do you just
but those
grind
are
it up,
very
or?
small. No, well, you can either use the whole flower, which is the cone, or you can get them pelletized into what looks like gerbil food, into a little pellet. And generally that's how every brewery gets them, just because it's easier on storage. So let's just say you have this much in whole hop flower form, that much would look like this much in a pellet, because it's totally compressed into a hard pellet.
Cool.
So when you're dealing with 20 and 30 and 40 and 60 pounds, 60 pounds could look like this in a whole leaf, and then 60 pounds could look like this and like this. So
But
just
how do you
imagine
get it into the liquid?
you just throw it into the liquid that's boiling. So the only way you can get the flavor and the bitterness out of the hop is during the boil.
Okay.
In the hop flower, there's resins in it, and in those resins that are down the stem of it, that's where the bitterness and the flavor comes from, is from a tiny little resin gland inside the hop flower, which there's thousands and thousands of them, but that's where you get it. And the only way you can get bitterness or flavor out of the hops is through boil. So just like you would boil spaghetti, you boil this liquid that you mashed before it from grain, and now you have this sweet liquid that's called wort. It's a German word, and then you add hops to it. So if you didn't add hops to it, you'd have this overly sweet liquid. So you're trying to balance this sweet liquid out with the bitterness of hops. And that's the end of the interview.